Fish on Fridays. I'm Al McCauley, and if you are a regular watcher of this web series, you might notice the background is a little bit different that's behind me today. That's because my wife and I recently moved, and the studio that I used to use, which was in our basement of our old home, has now become an office in the new home, and we're quite unsettled still, so I have books on the shelves. Not going to be the final product, but I wanted to have at least some backdrop for those of you who get bored with what I'm saying, perhaps, and want to look at what titles I've read. They're just up there right now as fillers, more or less. So over the weeks, you'll see that change. So pardon our dust while we film this series. But today I want to take you on a little imaginary journey to East Central Italy, to a small town of about 10,000 called Loreto. And in Loreto, there is a home, a very special home, in fact, a world-famous home that has been a destination point for at least 8 centuries for pilgrims, really famous pilgrims for that matter. And if you don't know what I'm talking about the House of Loreto. And it is the home that is believed to have been Mary's home, the Virgin Mary's home, where she was born, where she was raised in Nazareth, and where the Annunciation took place, when the angel Gabriel came to her and invited her to be the mother of God. It's a very simple home. It's made of stone. There's only 3 walls. It's about 13 by 13 feet, approximately. There's no foundation at all. And today, if you were to go to visit it as a pilgrim, what you would see is some Renaissance-era marble and really ornate surrounding it, kind of like encapsulating this or surrounding the home. So it's very, very beautiful to look at. This ornate structure around this very modest and humble home that's enclosed within it. But again, it's where we believe Mary lived, where she grew up, where she was raised by her parents. And it really talks about, if you think about this home that was in Nazareth and now is in East Central Italy, it should give you an indication of what the extraordinary measures our God will go to preserve this particular home and why it's important. So let's take a step back a little bit and look at this home, which again is dedicated to Our Lady of Loreto. The legend is that angels carried the home, the physical structure of Mary's home, from Nazareth to Italy. And it was moved because it needed to be protected, because there were all kinds of bandits, there were people, plunderers, there were barbarians, different people coming into northern Israel where Nazareth is, and they were trying to plunder this house. And so to take it away from being targeted by bandits, it was moved by angels to, well, actually several different places, to what we call Croatia today and other places. And it finally came to rest, if you will, in Loreto, in, as I said, East Central Italy. And it's said that if people visit this house, miracles have been attributed to it, miracle cures, all kinds of things have come from it. Miracles have come from it just by virtue of faithful pilgrims who've gone there. Now, what's fascinating about this house is you can look at this skeptically and say, come on, angels lifted a house, what are you talking about? And they flew it in the air, how many miles to get to Italy. You could also say, well, people deconstructed it, took it by boat and then reconstructed it. But the legend persists. And it's interesting to think about the idea that angels and what God could do to intervene into our human existence to protect this house. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But just to go back and look at, is this really a house from Nazareth in the first place? Let's just talk about that. In the 1960s, archaeologists took a look at the stones that were in the 3 walls that are remaining of the home, the original home. And what they found was interesting. They found that there were bits of pollen inside the cracks of the stone. And when they analyzed it, they found that the pollen was indigenous only to Israel, to the Middle East. And so that was one thing. They found graffiti, bits of graffiti on some of the stones that matched exactly graffiti that was left on the foundation in Nazareth of Mary's home. By the way, in Nazareth, there is a basilica over that, now built over that spot as well. So they know where it was. They also have taken the measurements of the 13 by 13 home that exists in Loreto, and they've matched it almost perfectly to the foundation that was left in Nazareth. So archaeologists, people who don't have a theological, or not theologically vested in this investigation, archaeologists have determined that it is the same house, that it indeed came from Nazareth. So however you want to believe it got there, the cynical part of us might want to say, come on, people did this, but the believing part of us should really give credence to the fact that angels could do this if this is what God wanted. So if we continue on the storyline, in the early 14th century, the Pope at the time, Clement V, issued a papal bull, basically a statement saying that if pilgrims go to this site and they honor Mary and by extension her son Jesus, that they would be granted indulgences. And so it became an incredibly popular place to visit. And it's about that same time that a statue was carved of Mary holding little baby Jesus out of cedar wood. And it was put on display in this house. So when pilgrims came to see it, they could know that it was Mary's house. Well, over the years, smoke from candles and from incense, because it's a very small area, affected the statue, and it kind of turned it brown and almost black. And so it became known as a Black Madonna, or as we call her today, Our Lady of Loreto. And so that statue, that image has become popular in and of itself, aside from the chapel. So if you can't visit the chapel, if you can't go to the house, I should say, in Loreto, you can still have this statue, if you will, or reproduction of the statue of Mary, of Our Lady of Loreto, in your home to remember this. But as I said, it's a popular destination for pilgrims. A lot of Catholic saints, a lot of well-known Catholic saints, over 200, have visited this place in the centuries. So people like Ignatius of Loyola, St. Charles Borromeo, Therese of Lisieux, my personal favorite, Francis Xavier Cabrini, an Italian saint, Francis de Sales, Pope John Paul II, Pope John Paul II went too. So, I mean, a lot of people have given credence to this place and really honor and respect the fact that it was Mary's house by virtue of their pilgrimages there. Since its inception, the church has looked at Our Lady of Loreto, and certain patronages have been attributed to her. So, for instance, she is believe it or not, the patron saint of aviators. Well, why? Because the angels flew the house. So it makes sense. For air flight attendants, for the Air Force. She is also the patron of construction workers, because, again, this was a house that was built that stayed intact that Mary lived in. Now, I'm talking about this particular feast happens we remember Our Lady of Loreto on December 10th. And it's funny because as Catholics, we know that Mary's month is May, and we know the month of the Rosary is October. So there are a lot of feast days with Mary throughout the year, but I'm wondering if December shouldn't be the new month of Mary, because if you think about this, the Immaculate Conception on December 8th, on December 12th is the Our Lady of Guadalupe, and of course, like I just said, December 10th is the feast of Our Lady of Loreto. So I guess the last thing I want to say about this is, what lessons can we take from this? Why is this important to even make an episode about? I think it's important for us to understand that it's God's plans and not ours that are important in life. If God wants to preserve this house, God can do it. We are not God. You and I are not God. And I thank God for that, because I don't know if I could handle being the master of the universe. But it's God's ways, not our ways, that are important. And if God chooses to do something miraculous, we shouldn't at all be surprised by that, because the Bible is filled. Everything about Jesus is a miracle, from virgin birth to resurrection of the dead, and everything in between is miracles. And Jesus said, we will see greater things than even he did, because he will be in heaven with his Father. John's gospel says that. So we shouldn't be surprised when miracles happen like this. The other thing I'd want to say is, it's important to understand that it's easy, very easy, to be skeptical and cynical. I think it's a lot harder to be a person of faith. And so if this is something that the church has held for 8 centuries to be true, that, I've seen enough of the effects of God. I've seen enough good things to trust that this could happen as well. The last thing I'll say is, if nothing else, if you hear this story and you're like, I still don't believe, at least take this lesson from it: the importance of home. The fact that the home is held up as the domestic church, the foundation of everything we do at Mass, everything we do as a church, really starts at home. It's reflected in the home, and what happens in the home then is reflected back to the church. It undergirds, it supports everything the church is. The home cannot be overstated how important the home life is for our faith, and the germination, the growth of our faith within families. So that's Our Lady of Loreto. So if you ever get to East Central Italy and you want to take a peek, I would encourage you to go on a pilgrimage there. But it's a wonderful feast day to remember every December 10th. So thanks for watching. We hope you will always tune in on Fridays for Fish on Fridays. We hope you would subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. But until next time, please be good to each other, and God bless.